So here we go. Good evening once again, listeners, and it's time for our special guest on the Tony Topping Show. We've been talking about psychic espionage. I've been getting the usual grief here, there, and everywhere due to the fact that people try to forget that I've been on the sharp end of things. As I keep saying to people, I'm a bit of a Jason Bourne, trying to find my identity with all my paranormal experiences. I don't profess to be psychic in any way, but I have had extreme paranormal experiences that I'm trying to get to the bottom of. So that's me. And interestingly enough, we are joined by Irene and we're joined by Mark. And Irene has written a book called The Psychic Spy, which is a work of fiction. So we are led to believe, cue the James Bond movie. And there's, well, dear listener, we'll cut to the chase. There's lots of sex in it. And there you go, lots of sex, more sex, and sex galore. No, there isn't actually. It's a very serious read. It's a very serious and compelling read about MI6 operations in remote viewing, which is a work of fiction that has been written. But it gives some insights for those of us who've studied this subject into what's going on. It has been quite a read. It's quite a courageous work, and it actually highlights the brutal mindset that people go through when they are doing this kind of work. It's not very nice at times, and I think it does take a toll on the people. Anyway, I've yattered on. I welcome Mark Johnson and Irene to the show. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Tony. How are you tonight?
Hello, Mark. Are you with us there?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having us on the show.
No problems at all. And Mark, you are Special Agent Mark Johnson, and you are. That's rather apt, isn't it? No, you're actually a publisher, aren't you, Mark? And you, what I'm interested to know about is how you met Irene. I'm getting confused. There's a character in it called Eileen, and there's Irene who wrote it. And it's causing me no end of confusion, I kid you not. Anyway, how did you meet Irene?
Well,
how did this all come about, Mark? I'm interested to know.
Well, I met Irene, Irene Allen-Block, when I was introduced to her as being the head of Spirit Rescue International. And I'm being a paranormal investigator myself. We got together. I joined her group, and I've been working with them for a while. And I've been very impressed with her background and experiences. And she told me about this book idea that she was working on. And she started sending me chapters, and I instantly fell in love with this book. So I helped her to edit it and finish the book, and together we used that to launch our new publishing company, Glenn and Ty. And The Psychic Spy is our premiere book, and it just was released last week.
Yeah, indeed. So, and I think we'll find that MI6 are Britain's foreign intelligence service. They're in charge of gathering intelligence on foreign espionage targets, aren't they? And the thing with that is when the British public look at remote viewing and psychic spying, they'll see an MOD thing regarding this where the Ministry of Defence turn around and go, oh, there's not much going on with that. When, in fact, this book gives some very interesting insights into what was actually going on with Britain regarding this. And I know the founder of remote viewing, Ingo Swann in the United States, discovered that MI5 had been using psychic spies from 1900. In fact, the equivalent of MI6 had actually been using psychic spies under the first kind of foreign espionage service in Britain under Sir Francis Walsingham. And so these kind of things, what amazed me in the book, Mark, is the bit to do with the Falkland Islands and the way the remote viewing unit was deployed during that. Now, I didn't know anything about that, and I found it absolutely fascinating. Is it true to say that it's doing well at the moment? How did you find? Were you astounded by the material in it, including every position in the Kama Sutra? It's steamy, listeners. It's really steamy.
Let's just say that there's a little bit in the book.
Experiences.
Yes. Yeah. It's a little bit in the book for everyone, and that there's adventure, there's romance, there's political intrigue, and again, with each chapter, Irene, when she would send it over to me, I was just astounded and enthralled by this material. And I agree with you. The chapter on the Falkland Islands campaign was particularly interesting to me because of how incredible detailed it was and how it brought you in on an emotional level to what was going on, and bringing out a little known side to that conflict that the rest of the world and me as an American not as exposed to it as you over there. So it was a fascinating read, and Irene just did a fantastic job with it.
Yes, it certainly looks like it, and it certainly looks as if the British technique was based on like an outward bounding remote viewing technique, an out of body remote viewing technique, where the Americans based it on like a subliminal zip file type ideogram technique.
You got to remember that Eileen was trained by a Russian.
So was she?
Yes, she was.
Ah, right. Now that's interesting because from what I was told, the character in the book was trained by somebody called D. Now, have I missed something there? No?
No. He was head of MI6.
Right. Right. I thought in the James Bond movie it was M.
Today, or M was in James Bond. D, I could hardly C, could I, or M, so I chose D.
You chose D. Are you a fan of the spy movies then, Irene? Are you a fan of the Bourne trilogies and John le Carre and stuff like that?
No, Brian, my husband, he is. He loves Jason Bourne. Yeah, and he's always got it on the television, so I go in the other room.
Have you seen any of the Jason Bourne movies at all?
No, I don't watch television.
You don't watch television?
I don't watch television. I don't read the newspapers. I don't do any of that sort of thing because of my remote viewing. So.
Right, I get you. Are you just distorted then? I think we've still got you online. Yeah, we have. Yeah, no, that's okay. The reason why I say that is because prevailing throughout the book is this subtle frog in boiling water, subtle turning up the heat of pressure on the person in the remote viewing unit. And I know that Ingo Swan's team were under immense pressure. And to look at Ingo Swan speaking, you would think he was a gentleman, but he probably was, but he sadly passed away now. But the pressure was immense. What kind of pressure is your character under who you wrote about in the book? In terms of, it seems to me, would you agree in saying that there's a gentle rise of pressure on them? It all seems like a jolly jape. Girl in a travel agency.
Yeah, they were gentle with her in the beginning, but as time got on, the pressure really turned up.
Yeah. And
she had to produce the goods sort of thing.
Yes.
And that was it. The Russian that actually trained her, what did I call him in the book again? I can't remember now.
Matthew.
That was the, he actually, in the book, he was trained in Russia as a psychic spy. He came over escaped, got over to England, was taken on by the MI6 and trained the team from there. And,
why did they recruit a Russian then? I mean, John le Carre aptly names MI6 as the circus. Why did he's a double. What is that? In the work of fiction, he's a double agent, was he?
No, he wasn't a double agent. I can't explain how I explained it now because I haven't read the book for a long time.
I can interject because I think I've reread and edited the book so often that I think I know it better than Irene. But he was a defector and came over to England and was immediately implemented by MI6. And I think it's no secret that the Russian psychic programs were far more advanced than what the UK and the US had at the time. And they definitely, this Matthew character was so well trained and very excellent at what he did. And he helped to raise the bar and increase the level of intelligence within MI6, and also finding talent like the Eileen Evans character and training her to come up to his level.
It's very... Sorry, Iris, say again.
more or less his level. She would never be as good as him.
She'd never be as good as him. It's interesting because the Americans use this ideogram target reference technique, and the Russians used a contour brainwave technique, like a tuning fork technique.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you...
And I tell you, that hurts.
Yeah, yeah. Does it hurt on the left-hand side of the brain by any chance when applied?
Yes.
I'm on the right track.
I tell you what, it feels like the whole of your brain is actually vibrating.
Yeah.
It's so painful, but your body does adjust to it. It does adjust to it over a period of time. But the problem is, your eardrums they vibrate as well at the same time. Can you imagine a glass when someone's singing high pitch, what that goes like, and then it shatters? It's very similar to that. That's what the feeling is. You think the whole of your head is just going to... Well, I'm talking too much, aren't I?
It's interesting because the Russian technique, what is quoted as being the brainwave contour technique. Although if I look on the internet, I can see everything there is to do with the ideogram technique used in coordinate remote viewing. Yeah. I can see everything there is with Courtney Brown's SRV and David Morehouse's technique. But when it comes to, as they were known, as I've said previously, Troop 10,003, which is the Russian KGB unit responsible for remote viewing, there isn't a technique anywhere. It's not publicised. And it's interesting how secret in the book MI6 were covering their tracks using something called a subspace aspect. Now, I'm intrigued by that one. I've heard that term before. What is that different to coordinate remote viewing? So using the subspace, but you were using ideogram techniques as well, weren't you, in the techniques? So it read in the book. But what's the differences? What is a subspace aspect?
In those days, there was called the soul side.
Right.
This subspace side, that's what all it means. It's the soul side.
The soul side, yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and it's the soul that's projected rather than the actual subconscious, which is the key difference, I think, between the Russian, the US, and the Brits.
Get a lot of feeling of biolocation.
Yeah.
Places at the same time.
Yeah, yes, indeed, and the pressure that is on when I was reading this book was remarkable. In fact, I thought at times it was tragic, frankly. Believe it or not, listeners, Irene has a big organisation called Spirit Rescue International. She has a couple of pets. What is it? Bo, Del Boy, Brownie.
No, Del Boy, see.
Yes.
Denzel.
Yes.
Named after the Only Fools and Horses characters.
Yes.
And the girls are Tazzy, the Tasmanian Devil, Pippa and Poppy.
That's it. Yeah, I've got it right now. Yeah, and they're acutely psychic. But my question to you is this: reading the book, it's a tragedy to see things we would consider sacred, like the spiritual realm, being used as some sort of warfare tool. How do you feel about that one?
I'm not really happy. I've got to admit, I'm not really happy about that.
No.
I don't think that any poor souls on the other side or anything like that, or anything. No, I don't. No, I'm not happy about that at all.
No, that it can be used in that way, and that's what's clearly highlighted in the book is the tragedy and the constant harrying and pressure that the character in the book is put under to do this, do that, and assassinate someone psychically as well. And that in the book is vividly written. Actually, I found it tragic.
They've done that.
Yeah, I know they do it all the time. But was there not something in the book to do with somebody in Turkey? Is that correct, or did I hear that from another source?
No, that was there was an article that was on the online about a week or two ago. Yeah, where they were claiming that somebody in Turkey was assassinated via a psychic assassin.
Yes,
and so it's still in the news that people claim. And, with these types of assassinations, it's almost the perfect crime. There's no way, if they could stop somebody's heart, then it looks like they've just died of a heart attack or natural causes. And nobody would be suspicious. There's no chemicals in the blood, no open wounds. It's just that they dropped dead.
Yeah, perfect assassination. But you know, Neil had done that. And she wasn't the only one. She'd done it with the frog. And from there, they took her even further doing it.
Yeah, so really...
She actually died herself of a heart attack.
What? Sorry, you've lost me. Who died? The lady in the book.
Coolagina. Nina Coolagina.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
She tested it out on a frog. She killed the frog, and then this scientist, this skeptical scientist, didn't believe her, so she was put to the test with him. He got to the point where he felt like his chest was going to cave in, or typical symptoms of a heart attack. His breathing got bad, and the medical staff that was in the room at the time had to stop the experiment.
Right.
Well, she went even further, and she was a psychic assassin, apparently, using these things. But after she died, you see, then Alaviva came along, Alaviva Gondova, and she was far better than Nina.
Right.
And she's the foe to Eileen in the book.
Yeah.
The one that's after Eileen.
And so the bit about the Falklands War is a particularly fascinating chapter in the book because Britain is a very secretive nation, isn't it? It doesn't really talk much about that. And there's also the bit to do with the tracking hostages.
Anything out of Britain about remote viewing?
Yeah, no. Well, there isn't anything available, and this book does give some valuable insights into the hidden area that went on in the area of remote viewing. And what I'm thinking is the Falkland Islands bit where you were tracking, or rather where the fictional character was tracking targets. How successful was that?
How successful?
Yeah, how successful?
It helped an awful lot with the actual. How can I say it? The information that was given.
Go on, honey, you're all right. The information that was given, yeah.
Well, the way
I've lost the words.
I'll cut in here for you, Irene. The way that the way that she wrote it in the book is these types of techniques were an invaluable tool that they used to track ship movements. What the Argentinian fleet was doing, coming in through certain areas. Giving it and sending that information out to the troops in the field to prepare for attacks. Because there was, and you have to keep in mind that these types of techniques are part of an overall intelligence gathering, everything being used from satellite data to troops on the ground, boots on the ground, collecting information. And, they compare what, Eileen, the character of Eileen in the book, what she was able to read and pick up on is validated by people who are there. And, it was interesting, and this is one of the fascinating things about it, is that the character is able to look not only at what's happening in real time, but also looking in towards future events so that they could plan ahead on how to, when the fleet was coming in from the north, and that actually did happen, although they actually came in a little bit later because there was a weather delay. So even with looking in the future, there's always a slight possibility that it may not be 100% because the future is still uncertain.
Right. Yeah. Yes, I get you. Well, it's certainly not written in stone. But I mean, what was the throwback with the character, in your opinion, Irene, being exposed to all this psychic projection? What other events perhaps you didn't write in the book happened that you could perhaps share with the listeners where the character was not exposed to? What things did you not write in? I think that happened to her due to exposure. That's what. Sorry, lovey.
That's all for the next book.
I know, but our listeners want to know. Don't do that to us. We need to know. Give us an example of what perhaps the exposure to all this, apart from post-traumatic stress disorder.
That was really bad.
Sorry, say again.
Post-traumatic stress disorder is really bad.
It was really bad. Yeah. How many people were in the unit suffering from that then? In the fictional book, how many people were suffering from that then?
Well, out of the viewers, every now and then there'd be one carty sort of sent for counselling sort of thing. But I think with Eileen, what she went through at the very end.
Yeah.
She had it worse than anyone.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is that from what you're telling me, from the
Sorry.
No, I was just saying what you're telling me from the book is that even to this day, the character in the book is still hunted by the KGB. Is that correct? Or what is the KGB? Even to this day, she's still closely monitored because due to activities over there. It really is, dear listener, like a John le Carré book that deals with psychic spying. It's quite unbelievable what the character is subjected to. Started out as a young girl in a travel agent's, and it's very, as I say, it's very vivid. Is the contrast as to how it all develops, so that she ends up being traumatized by the things that she is asked to do. I mean, Mark, what's your take on it, whereby you think that whereby a spiritual realm, what we consider sacred, is used as a tool of warfare in your experience? Because you're involved in radio and the paranormal industry in general. What do you think of it when they're using remote viewing for offensive purposes, using these techniques?
Well, first of all, real quick, before I mention that, I just want to comment on the fact that one of the things that I really loved about Irene's book is the fact that her writing and explaining how these techniques work and how this character went through what she did is so down to earth and believable. And she doesn't write about the new age woo-woo stuff that a lot of authors will go for, and the shock value or whatnot. She tells it like it is. And I think that's what makes you really care about what happens to Eileen, the character, throughout the course of the book, and how being exposed to some of the horrors she witnessed, that post-traumatic stress, knowing she's hunted, it's very traumatic. And going back to your question on, using psychic abilities, of course, I think that goes against.
What is it in the book, Irene, that you're most passionate about when you wrote it? What is it, the thing that actually leaps out in front of you that you really liked or are really passionate about in what you wrote about the experiences of Eileen?
The sex parts.
The sex parts, right? We'll go into that. Yeah, no problems. We'll go into that because we need to.
All the time I was writing them, I was embarrassed.
Don't worry about that bloody hellfire. Right, hang on. Just say, Nick. Yeah.
I was totally embarrassed by how I done it. I don't know.
Real quick, Tony, before we get to the next question, when you get in Irene, can I real briefly finish the question that you asked me before we got cut off?
Yes, it was about, wasn't it? It was about the using spiritual stuff for warfare.
Yeah, because that's when I got cut off.
I mean, no stone is unturned, is it? Really, it's quite disgusting, I think. But anyway.
Yeah. So let me just answer that real quick, and then you can answer the thing with Nick.
All right, Chuck. Right, here we go.
Okay. I personally think it's repugnant. I think that spiritual gifts are gifts, and the spiritual realm is not to be used in a negative manner. I mean, not just by governments using it to spy on one another or commit assassinations or manipulate people. I mean, there are all aspects of the dark side of the paranormal out there. From people dabbling in black arts to voodoo to whatever. But at the same time, it's supposed to be used for light, and it's supposed to be used for helping people here. Yeah. That's my personal opinion of it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of it.
No. If you look at Joseph Matt-Moneagle, and if you look at the guys involved in the Russian side of things as well during this, they had major spiritual awakenings. I think Skip Atwater, who was in charge of something called Project Gondola Wish, which was used for, I think, offensive psychic operations, he had a massive spiritual awakening from all this. And, of course, the Russians developed something called New Cosmology from all this. Yet, Irene, we don't see this in the book.
Certainly, if you've got any gifts, it does enhance them. It really does enhance any gifts you've got.
But what I'm saying is, in your book, you don't see anybody from let's say your section of MI6 or whatever in the fictional. You don't see them having these spiritual awakenings like the Americans and Russians did. It's all kind of dirty, nasty, pressure all the way. You really feel it. You really feel the pressure coming off the page at you. It's I feel for the character, I really do, and what they were subjected to, because it's that mindset that people are not prepared for. I certainly wasn't when it all happened to me. And interestingly enough, just for the listeners' interest, there's actually a full version of the Kama Sutra in the book, isn't there, Irene? There's some real.
It is a bit naughty in places.
It is, isn't it? It is a bit naughty in places. But I think what it shows once again is the love between two people set against the backdrop of immense pressure and one person not knowing what the other person is doing. Because it's interesting that she was recruited as a young girl working in a travel agency, and then the story actually escalates from there. Nick Redfern actually give you a tremendous. A real good write-up with it. He enjoyed it very much. Did research on Nick Redfern.
He put it on his blog yesterday.
Yeah.
This is all excited about. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, exactly. Is it true to say then that what really kind of like floated your boat when you were writing it? Then what were you really passionate about when you were writing it? What was the bit that you really enjoyed writing?
Actually, it wasn't so much about enjoying writing it. It went the opposite way with me in a lot of ways. I became down, depressed.
Really?
It brought back a lot of memory.
Right. Yeah. What is interesting to note is that coming towards the end of the book, the character is still involved in a special unit that deals with bizarre national security issues that may come up. Is that still ongoing then? That, according to your sources, is that still happening?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still going on. What kind of things do they have to deal with? Say you can't tell.
I don't care what anyone says. In every country, right?
Yes.
What with the Asians and one thing or another into remote viewing now, every country has their remote viewers. They are picking it up. They are improving on it. They've got to keep on top of every other country.
Yeah.
So they can deny it as much as they like. They've got remote viewers.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, where do you think the American projects went then? I mean, what we've got on the internet at the moment is this nice, fluffy thing that the public see regarding the drawing of targets by subliminal technique, and it's all very nice and loads of documents declassified about that. But where do you think it's all gone? Because my God, it's gone somewhere. I think it's gone a lot deeper than what they're actually saying on the net. Where do you think it's gone, Irene?
I've got no idea. I don't keep in with the American side of it.
No, but
I know they had some brilliant remote viewers out there. Absolutely brilliant.
I can tell you, speaking,
sure they're still working. A lot of them.
Right.
Speaking from the American side, being over here, I'm going to tell you, the one thing that the American government has been very good at is poo-pooing anything that has to do with psychic development. They've always come out and say, "Oh yeah, we've experimented with it. It didn't work," and our media is all too happy to go along with it. If you talk to the normal everyday person out here, they think psychic abilities are bunk. That it's not true, that it's charlatans and people trying to pull one over on an unsuspecting public. So it's the perfect cover. They're doing it, they know it exists, but yet they go right along with the media, and the media I personally think is in their back pockets, to downplay those types of abilities here so that the general public not only doesn't believe it, they don't even want to look into it. If they hear anything, they laugh it off. It's a perfect cover.
Yeah, it is. It's an absolute perfect cover. I agree. There is a wall of secrecy around it because it's gone far deeper than what they're letting on, coupled with the fact that there are very dark esoteric forces out there, very dark, that are also probably using this for wrongful ends. Okay, all right, yeah. Well, for the listeners' interest, what was interesting was the as I said earlier, there was it's called Project Blue Star, or rather, should I say, the Blue Star? It's codename Blue. What is it? Project Blue Star, Irene?
Project Codename Blue Star.
Codename Booster, that's it. And oddly enough, the Russians, there's a site on the internet that indicated that the recent arrests of the Russian spy ring a few years back were to do with the fact that they were all psychics under the name the Blue Star Group, which is very interesting considering that the character in the book Matthew is Russian. I find that just fascinating. I don't know whether that's a coincidence or not. And before we went to air, Irene's doggies were going off. One wonders, it's a strange world. Is all this? As a matter of interest, Irene, did the remote viewing team have a monitor like the Americans did, describing and directing and trying to gain better information? Sometimes,
sometimes, yeah. Either Caroline in the book monitored, or it was Matthew himself that monitored. But then, as the book progressed and the Eileen and Matthew became a separate team to the rest of them,
right?
They were more elite viewers, sort of thing. They worked on their own.
I get you.
Except through the Falklands, then Caroline would monitor one, and what was the name of the other character I had? Mark?
Caroline and Sandra.
Sandra would monitor the other.
Just out of interest, then, was there a lot of problems with front end loading and projection from the monitor of what they thought the target might be? There wasn't. That's interesting. So you weren't actually picking anything up
no
from the
front
monitor
loading at all.
Nothing. Oh, that's interesting because the Americans had a hell of a job on with all that, with telepathic overlay and front end load and all that kind of thing. It didn't happen with you guys though in the fictional. No, absolutely amazing. It really is fascinating. It really is. There's a paragraph in the book where which I find disturbing. Actually, where the fictional character that you're written about is tasked to kill someone, and I found that all very disturbing. That you were a young girl in a travel agency that is recruited, the character in the book, and it goes through all this, and the pressure is built up to the point where she's gonna kill somebody. Is he a KGB man? Is that correct?
Which one? I think she kills a couple in the book, doesn't she?
It's the bit where we're in where they've got the false documents and
Is it the one where she forces him into the road in front of a lorry?
Yeah, it's the one where he crosses the road near a lamppost.
Mm.
Yeah,
the idea was for him to be killed in the first place, but she didn't know. The character in the book didn't know that. She thought she was out there to kind of read his mind, sort of thing.
Yes, that's right.
The real task was to kill him.
Yeah, that's right, and it goes through vivid detail as to what the character in the book Eileen is going through, and I'd just like to read a paragraph where this happened. It just makes an interesting read. What we got, listener, is a young girl that has been recruited in a travel agency and has been developed to a certain point where I'm thinking, as I'm reading it, that she's becoming a remote viewer, and we're all nice and fluffy looking at targets, and then all of a sudden the dynamics change when they're asking her to go that one bit further and do the deed and kill someone by psychic influencing. Commonly, the Americans referred to it as 8 ability. Did you just refer, does the character and your sources, did they refer to that as just remote influencing or psychic influencing? There was no fancy code name to it or anything like that?
No fancy code name.
No, it was just plain and simple. Yeah. So let me just read this bit here that is interesting. You're by a lamppost, you're in a street, you've gone through all this, and what is interesting is you're a young girl, the character has been a young girl who's been developed through all this process, to which the world knows nothing about all this. Britain, this is the first time I've seen anything about Britain's involvement in all this, which makes it equally interesting. And people you have trusted throughout the book, your character has trusted, are now telling you to do this. Here's a little paragraph. As I spoke, I noticed a change come over his face, and his next words shocked me to the core. "Take him out, Eileen," he whispered fiercely. "Do it now." "What? That's not my instructions." "I'm telling you, take him out. If you don't, then I have instructions to do it myself, and then we will both be in serious trouble. Now do it now before it's too late." He grabbed my arm and shook me. There's a Russian wording there, not sure. "God damn it, do it," he cried out. I was shaking as I focused on the man as he stood next to the busy road. A large, heavy lorry was approaching, and I forced his mind with all my will. His face seemed to go blank for the briefest moment before he walked straight out in front of the lorry without looking. The screech of brakes shrilled through my ears, and I thought my head would explode. I had a sickening thud as the lorry hit him squarely, sending him flying several feet forward to land on the hard asphalt. I closed my eyes and screwed up my face with the pain of it. "Come, let us get closer," said Piter. People had ran out in the road to see if there was anything they could do, as Piter pushed his way through the crowd with me in close pursuit. We reached the man to find him unconscious, blood running from cuts to his face. He was still breathing, but only just. Piter turned and whispered in my ear, "Stop his heart." I didn't know what else to do. A crowd had gathered around the injured man, and I could hear the sirens in the distance getting closer. The window of opportunity was closing quickly, and I felt Piter's anxiety heighten with each passing section. We were being told again. I focused on the part of the man's brain that controls the electrical impulses sent to the heart and stopped them cold. He took one final breath and then was still. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And that for me is the kind of the mindset, an insight into the mindset that actually goes on with this, which, as a matter of interest, Mark, if I could just bring you in, do you think that people who do this are psychopaths?
No, not at all. I think true psychopaths would have an issue with being able to develop their psychic abilities to this part, because to this level, I think there's something within their brains that is not in tune. They're very cold, motionless, where these people that were recruited into these programs were brought in because they did show the abilities of having these psychic abilities. And, you know, most of these people who have psychic abilities are very empathic. They're very emotional. They tune into other emotions, where a psychopath is totally devoid of emotion. At least in terms of having empathy for other people. And that's why I think in the terms of the character Eileen coming in, being groomed, being shown, oh, you're just going to be reading and taking these, you know, looking at these situations and gathering information and intelligence, but they build her up over time to get her to the point where then suddenly she's thrust into having to kill somebody and not being prepared for it, but not having a choice.
How do you feel about that, Irene, reading that back to you? I was a little bit fast on my reading there, but it'll do the job. There's room for improvement on it. But, you know, how do you feel about it when you hear that? What do you feel goes through your mind?
I thought you read it very well, actually, to tell you the truth.
Sorry.
It kind of shook me up.
Yeah.
It was... It's difficult. It's difficult. Yeah. It's kind of brings everything back emotionally and. Yes.
Does the person concerned? What is the aftermath of it for them? Do they have to live with this? Obviously. What is the? What
anger.
Did they go through? Anger.
Total anger. Yeah. Afterwards, because she'd been duped by them. You know, she'd been used. Yes. She felt used. She was really angry.
Yeah.
Really, really angry about that.
Yeah.
And she felt betrayed. Everything just went, you know. And even when I was writing it, it was all there. All that betrayal, everything was there.
Yeah, it wasn't a very pleasant situation to deal with, and to me, it's as if exploitation was that. As a matter of interest, did the source tell you how much they were paid as a matter of interest for this work? Or what? Because I get the impression that the person being written about isn't working for MI6 as like in the context of George Smiley would be, but has been recruited as an asset. Is the source an asset or is she an actual agent? There's a difference, isn't there?
Yeah, there is a difference. She was an agent at the time.
She was an agent, yeah. That's very,
now she's more an asset.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'll edit this bit out when I'm talking now.
As far as being paid, do they ever pay very much? Not a lot, you know.
There's another interesting bit here about the remote viewing where you were having a dream. I'll edit all this out as I'm talking now, but there's a dream, isn't there, where the guy in the water, which I found also on page 68, that I found absolutely incredible. Now, this you saw in the remote viewing session, is that correct?
Yeah.
And the dream of ship...
The dream. That was the dream.
Right.
Yeah, the character Eileen in the book, when she went home during the Falkland Island Wars, she was at home and then she had a dream that night, and which took her back to the remote viewings and saw that young man in the water. Yeah,
I reached down to grab onto him, but our hands did not meet. Is that a dream? That's not a remote viewing session.
That happened.
So that was that an actual dream, or was that a remote viewing session?
It was a dream. In the session, it was a dream.
Right. Okay. So it was a dream. So interestingly enough, then I'll talk again now. The listener, I'm interested to know, in view of all this remote viewing that the source was actually doing, the character in the book Eileen, what kind of dreams and other associated things did she suffer from? Because there was obviously some sort of throwback and perhaps no consideration for the mental impact that this would have on you. And surely the management who were in charge of you would have realised that there would have been a mental impact affecting performance. Did they have no idea whatsoever how to deal with that then?
Sorry, who had no idea?
To you, Irene, exposing you to this, or exposing the character, should I say, who's been written about in the book. Did they have any idea at all of the mental impact that would just knock the hell out of it?
She kept it quiet. She kept a hell of a lot of it quiet, and she only spoke about it to the people she felt she could trust. She just didn't want to go into counselling.
I get you, but if she was traumatised by the events that they've done, how did that infect the intelligence product? Because the Russians had quality control systems that I understand were second to none, and the Americans did. But with the UK, how did that data affect?
With this particular character, she had to put everything aside. Whatever happened to her, she'd put to one side and just carry on.
Yeah.
Even whether it was dreams or lack of sleep, whatever it was, she would still carry on.
But saying she's still carrying. But what I'm saying is, how was the accuracy of the data affected under this regime of pushing and putting the pressure on you all, and the characters in the book? How did that affect the gathered information? Was there a demise in the quality of delivery?
No, I don't think no.
There wasn't. No. That's very interesting.
No,
I'm just intrigued. That was all. The thing that fascinated me in the book is the section to do. Go on, sorry, Ian, go ahead.
You can't be 100% right all the time, obviously.
Yeah, right.
But no, it never really affected it.
Right, I get you. That's very interesting. That is very interesting. There's also a very interesting chapter in the book, or paragraph should as well, a whole thing that fascinated me with the Falklands and the remote viewing that the unit did regarding the Falklands. I've not seen this before anyway. I found it absolutely fascinating. The thing that I found fascinating was this reoccurring out-of-body experience or dream that you were having. I'd just like to read it to the listeners. Am I okay to read it out? Because I think the listeners will be fascinated by this. The dream... the character is having a recurring dream all the time of a ship flying the Argentinian flag, suddenly exploding in a giant fireball of smoke and flame, and there were bodies everywhere floating in the water. Scores more people were splashing about, so it reads. Just continue. The ship was on fire with sailors running about on the deck in panic. As the ship began to sink, I found my attention focused on a young man in the water. I saw myself floating above him as I watched him struggle in the water. The look of fear strong on his face. He looked up, and to my utter astonishment, he reached up towards me, calling out the word Ayuda, I think that's pronounced, help. And then there's the shock from the character in the book that this man can actually see you. So it's like an out-of-body experience that's actually happening. And I just the whole section on this.
I think that might have been because he was in the throes of death anyway. He was drowning, you know. So maybe
yeah.
Any psychic ability he had was enhanced at that particular point.
Yes, that will make a lot of sense. It continues, I reached down to grab onto him, but our hands did not meet, and I watched as he sank beneath the water. His face and the fear in it will permanently be etched on my mind. I had mistakenly believed these dreams were the result of my tired mind, but never dreamed they could be a real event. I wisely kept quiet about the dreams for fears that Sandra, another character in the book, would think I couldn't handle the workload. And then on May the 2nd, the General Belgrano, an Argentine cruiser, was hit by a torpedo from one of our submarines and sank. The loss of life amounted to more than 300 Argentine sailors. That was when I finally realized that the dreams were in fact premonitions. What is interesting with that is the sentence, his face, it will be permanently etched on my mind. What else was permanently etched on the people who were involved in this unit? What else is permanently etched on their minds is my question, Irene, to you.
I don't know. I can't tell you what was etched on their minds.
Do you reckon, is that because it's a secret? You do know, but you can't tell because the source isn't...
It's a book.
Yeah, I know that. I get you. What I'm saying is, what I'm interested to know, what is permanently etched on the character's mind. Is there anything else beyond all this? Is what I'm interested to know that will be etched on her mind for life. Is she traumatized for life after all this?
Eileen definitely is.
Yeah. Very interesting. It's a very interesting.
Eileen, yeah, she would be definitely traumatized for life.
Yeah.
Matthew, not so much. Matthew, there was something strong about Matthew.
Right.
Stronger personality. Maybe it was his upbringing, his training, I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. It's just, it really is interesting. There's a thing here that says on June the 8th, something strange happened where instead of viewing into the future, I saw events unfolding in real time. I saw two landing ships preparing to unload soldiers, the RFA Sir Galahad and the RFA Sir Tristram, coming under attack by three Argentinian A4 Skyhawks. That's precognitive, is that, isn't it? Which is just, anyway, it's just fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And Irene, tell me, where can listeners buy your book from? Or even Mark, tell us.
Well, the book is available right now on Amazon, Amazon UK, and Amazon.com here in the States. It's also available in a Kindle version, and should also soon be available in bookstores.
Absolutely excellent stuff. It is an excellent.
Yes, it's also available on our publisher's website, theglannettye.com.
Right, that's absolutely fantastic. It's these are what I've picked out, dear listener, are elements that that were etched on my mind after reading it, and the mindset involved in getting involved in all this is absolutely unbelievable. If anybody, I always think, dear listener, of the Bourne trilogy, and I think it's the Bourne Ultimatum. It's the third one where they go after the journalist on Waterloo Station. And the mindset and mentality behind going after that individual is just frightening, and it gives an insight, does this book, into all that in a way never seen before. It's the first time ever I've seen anything come out from the camp of British intelligence regarding remote viewing. The last time I was reading that information was in the 1600s and before in the 1500s against the Catholic Church. So it's been fascinating. Irene and Mark, thank you for coming on the Tony Topping Show. It's been a blast, and thank you. And I'm off to the Lamb and Flag for a pint. Are you coming with us?
Okay. Thank you, Tony.
All right. So catch you later, guys.
Thank you, Tony.
This is the Tony Topping Show. That's rather apt, isn't it? No, you're actually a publisher, aren't you, Mark? And you, what I'm interested to know about is how you met Irene. I'm getting confused. There's a character in it called Eileen, and there's Irene who wrote it. And it's causing me no end of confusion, I kid you not. Anyway, how did you meet Irene? Well, how did this all come about, Mark? I'm interested to know.
Well, I met Irene, Irene Allen-Block, when I was introduced to her as being the head of Spirit Rescue International, and I'm being a paranormal investigator myself. We got together. I joined her group, and I've been working with them for a while, and I've been very impressed with her background and experiences. And she told me about this book idea that she was working on, and she started sending me chapters, and I instantly fell in love with this book. So I helped her to edit it and finish the book, and together we used that to launch our new publishing company, Glenn and Ty. And The Psychic Spy is our premier book, and it just was released last week.
Yeah, indeed. So, and I think we'll find that MI6 are Britain's foreign intelligence service. They're in charge of gathering intelligence on foreign espionage targets, aren't they? And the thing with that is, when the British public look at remote viewing and psychic spying, they'll see an MOD thing regarding this, where the Ministry of Defence turn around and go, oh, there's not much going on with that. When in fact, this book gives some very interesting insights into what was actually going on with Britain regarding this. And I know the founder of remote viewing, Ingo Swann in the United States, discovered that MI5 had been using psychic spies from 1900. In fact, the equivalent of MI6 had actually been using psychic spies under the first kind of foreign espionage service in Britain under Sir Francis Walsingham. And so these kind of things, what amazed me in the book, Mark, is the bit to do with the Falkland Islands and the way the remote viewing unit was deployed during that. Now, I didn't know anything about that, and I found it absolutely fascinating. Is it true to say that it's doing well at the moment? How did you find? Were you astounded by the material in it, including every position in the Kama Sutra? It's steamy, listeners. It's really steamy.
Yeah, let's just say that, there's a little bit in the book.
Experiences.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a little bit in the book for everyone, and that there's adventure, there's romance, there's political intrigue, and again, with each chapter, Irene, when she would send it over to me, I was just astounded and enthralled by this material. And I agree with you. The chapter on the Falkland Islands campaign was particularly interesting to me because of how incredible detailed it was and how it brought you in on an emotional level to what was going on, and bringing out a little known side to that conflict that the rest of the world, and me as an American, not as exposed to it as
person in the remote viewing unit. And I know that Ingo Swann's team were under immense pressure. And to look at Ingo Swann speaking, you would think he was a gentleman, but he probably was, but he sadly passed away now. But the pressure was immense. What kind of pressure is your character under, who you wrote about in the book, in terms of, it seems to me, would you agree in saying that there's a gentle rise of pressure on them? It all seems like a jolly jape. Girl in a travel agency.
Yeah, they were gentle with her in the beginning, but as time got on, the pressure really turned up.
Yeah. And
she had to produce the goods, sort of thing.
Yes.
And that was it. The Russian that actually trained her, what did I call him in the book again? I can't remember now.
Matthew.
That was he actually, in the book, he was trained in Russia as a psychic spy. He came escaped, got over to England, was taken on by the MI6 and trained the team from there. And,
why did they recruit a Russian then? I mean, John le Carre aptly names MI6 as the circus. Why did he's a double. What is that? In the work of fiction, he's a double agent, was he?
No, he wasn't a double agent. I I can't explain how I explained it now because I haven't read the book for a long time.
I can interject because I think I've reread and edited the book so often that I think I know it better than Irene. But he was a view over there, so it was a fascinating read, and Irene just did a fantastic job with it.
Yes, it certainly looks like it, and it certainly looks as if the British technique was based on like an outward bounding remote viewing technique, an out of body remote viewing technique, where the Americans based it on like a subliminal zip file type ideogram technique
to
remember
that Irene was trained by a Russian.
So was she?
Yes, she was.
Ah, right. Now that's interesting because from what I was told, the character in the book was trained by somebody called D. Now, have I missed something there? No?
No. He was head of MI6.
Right. Right. I thought in the James Bond movie it was M.
Or M was in James Bond. D. I could hardly C, could I? Or M. So I chose D.
You chose D. Are you a fan of the spy movies then, Irene? Are you a fan of the Bourne trilogies and John le Carré and stuff like that?
No, Brian, my husband, he is. He loves Jason Bourne. Yeah, and he's always got it on the television, so I go in the other room.
Have you seen any of the Jason Bourne movies at all?
No, I don't watch television.
You don't watch?
I don't watch television. I don't read the newspapers. I don't do any of that sort of thing because of my remote viewing. So.
Right, I get you. Are you just distorted then? I think we've still got you online. Yeah, we have. Yeah, no, that's okay. The reason why I say that is because prevailing throughout the book is this subtle frog in boiling water, subtle turning up the heat of pressure on the person. So, here we go. Good evening once again, listeners, and it's time for our special guest on the Tony Topping Show. We've been talking about psychic espionage. I've been getting the usual grief here, there, and everywhere due to the fact that people try to forget that I've been on the sharp end of things. As I keep saying to people, I'm a bit of a Jason Bourne, trying to find my identity with all my paranormal experiences. I don't profess to be psychic in any way, but I have had extreme paranormal experiences that I'm trying to get to the bottom of. So that's me. And interestingly enough, we are joined by Irene and we're joined by Mark. And Irene has written a book called The Psychic Spy, which is a work of fiction. So we are led to believe, cue the James Bond movie. And there's, well, dear listener, we'll cut to the chase. There's lots of sex in it. And there you go, lots of sex, more sex, and sex galore. No, there isn't actually. It's a very serious read. It's a very serious and compelling read about MI6 operations in remote viewing, which is a work of fiction that has been written. But it gives some insights for those of us who've studied this subject into what's going on. It has been quite a read. It's quite a courageous work, and it actually highlights the brutal mindset that people go through when they are doing this kind of work. It's not very nice at times, and I think it does take a toll on the people. Anyway, I've yattered on. I welcome Mark Johnson and Irene to the show. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Tony. How are you tonight?
Hello, Mark. Are you with us there?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having us on the show.
No problems at all. And Mark, you are Special Agent Mark Johnson, and you are